Yeah, I like that, obviously. So that's the record. I hope you like it. I really like it. And yeah, save it to your Spotify playlist for me. Follow Space Run on the DJ on Spotify. Also, like Apple Music, whatever, wherever you listen to music, Fade by Space Runner, the DJ is out now. Space Runner coming to you live from somewhere in space and time. What is going on? Today we're going to look at mixing down house music because that's all I have to do. And I've said this before, but a lot of the time on the channel we're doing things quickly, but I want to do things a bit slower. So I'm going to play this Crave You remix that is about 85% done. And I'm going to show you why it's 85% done and how to do that final 15%, because that makes a good song great. It really does. And the last 15% is super easy to fuck up. I bet many producers could relate that they've messed up a song in their mixdown or whatever. So we're gonna tackle like final ear candy and balance. We're also gonna tackle LUFS, which is the loudness units full scale. And we're also gonna get into converting things to audio in your mixdown and what a mixdown actually is. But first, Crave You, the Space Runner edit. It's a pretty big session. Still going. 40 tracks, that's actually not that big. So last stream we laid down the guitar, but actually I watched the streams back to the timestamps, and I realized that like one of the first licks I did on the guitar in the last stream was like, and I screwed up some notes even, but the first part of that was actually really cool with it when I wasn't really concentrating, so I went back and grabbed it. Build. Time to go into loudness units full scale. Bring it up on the screen. I love that I still got to fit that sax sample just in the back. Crave you. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I think so. Okay, so this is free. It's called Uline Loudness Meter 2. It's free. Integrated LUFS is really what I'm concerned about, right? So there was this thing called the loudness war, kids, back in my day, when music was on CDs. People trying to make it really, 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 really loud, so that it would beat other songs on the radio, blah, 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 which is why, like, early 2000s music is like, oh, not early 2000s music, really, more like 2007, 2008. That's when things started to get very loud. And loudness just, like, you'll notice I'm not saying volume, right? I'm not saying, oh, the volume was turned up too much, because that's like an arbitrary value that we set at any given point in the signal chain. So volume's not a good word to describe how loud something is, because for loudness you also you need like sound pressure level to be sort of taken into account, which is like what actually makes things loud in like physical space. And loudness units full scale is a great way to do it. I forget exactly how they're calculated, but 0 would be complete just like noise, right? Like it would be unlistenable. And what the integrated part means is, so you want to be in a negative value, right? Like that's a good thing. So zero is the top, and it would be unlistenable white noise or pink noise or whatever. You couldn't physically get a song to sound like that. So, but integrated means over time, right? So if you could see down here, it says 10 seconds elapsed. So we're just looking at the last 10 seconds here, right? And then I hit stop when the song finished, right? So it's also got a dB measurement. You know, you're like, why aren't you talking about dB? Because limiters take care of that. So this is trying to identify true peaks, right? Which is something that is, so a peak is when, you know, something overdoes it on the voltage side of things, or the digital version of that is just like digital clipping and it sounds real bad. So there's these things called true peaks or intersample peaks that, like, not only like the normal peak of your kick drum or whatever triggering the limiter, it could be an intersample peak, which is an intersample peak. I'm getting so nerdy on this episode. The intersample peak might, like, you might not see it or like a in the waveform itself, and depending on what limiter you're using, it might not notice it. So I'm using precision limiter on the master chain. That's it. There are no other plugins apart from this Uline monitoring plugin, which isn't making any sound or anything. It's just getting statistics, numbers. Precision limiter, baby. Let me just play the last sort of. No, I won't play something yet. So precision limiter is handling the true peaks well, because you can see this true peak value. Sometimes it goes red and it gets up, like up here, right? It's telling you, oh dear, there's a really, really close peak to 0 or closer. And precision limiter by UAD stops that all at, I've set it at -0.5. So this is really about like mastering as well. Loudness units and mastering are intertwined. So this is handling the peaks, so it doesn't. I mean, it's doing negative 12. It's doing negative 13 dB reduction, right? Which is obtuse to say the least. One limiter on your master probably shouldn't be doing that. So that's a bit too much work. So we're gonna mix it down and make it cleaner, and then turn it back up again, right? But before we do that, we're looking at the loudness units full scale, the LUFS integrated. And for the whole song, start to finish, there's quiet sections, there's loud sections. We're getting negative 8.5. There's a myth. Spotify, if you look this up officially, Spotify will say, your song should be negative 14 LUFS, otherwise they'll get penalized by the loudness meter. No one makes music that quiet. Not EDM, for certain. And then not pop music either. Other music might do well at negative 14 LUFS because it's a sound thing as well. It's not only the general loudness when you hit play on a system. It's also, there's a sound to something being squashed and cranky and loud, and like the limiter's about to fucking explode. There's something to that, which is cool. But then I wouldn't want my classical music to sound like that. That would, unless it's avant-garde, like On Purpose, etc. Always the caveat with music. There's always a counter argument for every rule. So take everything with a grain of salt, really. So yeah, so negative 8.5 is good. I've sent my music away, mixed down, so you've turned it down like quite a lot, so there's no compression going on the master bus. Because you want your mastering engineer to do that, and your mastering engineer should make it competitively loud. This one we're going to master ourselves because it's for an online competition. And I don't want to spend money on getting it mastered analog, but that's fine. We can do it digital. But we can take analog principles into it when we are mastering. So negative 8.5 is good. I've was gonna say this before. I've sent songs away, mixed down, to an amazing mastering engineer, millenniummastering.com, if you need him. And he sent them back at like negative 5 LUFS, which is really loud. That's how loud like people get in rhythm, dubstep, like heavy music. Sometimes even particular house songs can be incredibly loud. Like what was that project with, I think it was Golden Beaches and Odessa. What was that? Oh, it was called Bronson. Me listening to Celine Dion over here. Fire tune though. So this song, Heart Attack, it's nice, and it doesn't sound like it would be negative 5 LUFS, but trust me, I've put this into just to measure it when it came out, because I was like, this thing is loud, but maybe unnecessarily so. But I won't follow, 'cause I don't want to be your friend. What does it matter in the end? I want a little bit of lightning. No, I don't want to be your friend, 'cause these feelings are violent. This love's a heart attack. So that drop is so restrained, but it is as loud as humanly possible. This love's a heart attack. See, I've been patient, but I won't. Anyway, so I don't think this song needs to be negative 5. Because because that's like as loud as you should get, really. Some people might even be screaming at me for saying that, but it is what it is. No one listens to that Spotify thing where they're like -14. Nobody does that. Not people who make the music that I like. Anyway, so that means we're at a good -8.5 means we're at a good level for the work in progress mix, right? The working mix that we've been going along with. And because we're doing this on live stream, I try to mix as I go and make sure it's palatable, like for everybody, while I'm doing it. So we're not going to see a lot of balance changes just yet. But let's go through everything line by line. And before I get into the beginning of the end for this record, I will talk about layout, right? So organizing your sessions so you understand them in Ableton makes a hell of a difference. It's almost it's almost like what separates the best producers from good ones is how fluent you are in Ableton. And I'm not talking about I use this rack with my auto signal chain, so I don't even have to compress a finger. I just put on this rack. I'm not talking about presets. I don't really believe in like that kind of that kind of work, that kind of mixed preset thing. I'm like, just make it again in a different way. But that's me. If I had the privilege to go to like tertiary education, record stuff and get training and, you know, a degree. So I had that privilege, which I'm trying to sort of share on the internet with everybody if I can while we're doing this. So essentially how my Abletons are set up is, and there's these, let's talk about the sends. We've got a Valhalla room reverb. I just realized I was doing the chef's kiss for like probably 2 minutes. So Valhalla room. The Soul Guy. Got him on the LV426 mode. And this is on every session that I start with. I might change it. I might not. It's also got a EQ behind it. If you don't have Pro Q, you can just use the Ableton EQ. Although speaking of Pro Q, pro tip, when it's on 0 latency, it's not its best self. You may as well use the Ableton EQ if you're going to use like it does have like other features and stuff, but like, you know, expansion and compression, like with the frequencies. What do you call that when an EQ can do that, kind of like a multi-band compressor? I can't remember. Chat please. So you want Pro Q to be its best self, put that bad boy on natural phase. You can put it on linear phase, which is even better, right? And it's what it's talking about is just like how nice does this sound, especially for harsh curves like this. How nice does it sound? So it starts off in 0 latency because I might want everything to be really quick at the start of the session and make sure there's no like lag and delay and everything, and just like the session's getting slow. But now we're mixing it down, right? We're going from 85% to 100%. So I'll pop that bad boy in natural phase because it's a nice medium. You know, it's performance versus how good it sounds. Natural phase is perfect, in my opinion. So these are the sends. We've got a Valhalla vintage with a bit of a delay behind it. Just like the Ableton delay. I'll go on this one so you can see a little better. Yeah, so you got the Ableton delay down here before the reverb, feeding back about 38% with the dry wet, 33%. and it's on the 2 setting, which is just, it's not a, that's a 8th note is what that means, and then 3 is like a triplet 8th, and then 4 is a crotchet or a quarter note. So I was jumping around then between different lingos. So then that just goes into, and it's got a little bit of filtering on it, not as much as the other one, which is a bit cleaner. Filtering out the low end of the reverb, if you didn't know, just makes for less mess in the low to mid low end of your track. Then Valhalla Vintage, I really love this Cathedral Synth Hall preset. I might change. I've probably changed that a touch and boosted the high shelf a bit to get more of the sparkle back into the reverbs. Because in EDM, like, it's nice to start with that at least, and then you can take it off later in the mixdown. Then I've just got a regular Ableton delay, which a lot of stuff is sending to, like, so many different things is sending to that. I'll show you. Just ear candy kind of stuff, and like giving it more space. So as you can tell, even that delay thing it's right in the back, but it's really, really nice for movement. And I think it's one of these samples sending to it. Come on, you dog, where are ya? I swear to God, talking about session. Oh yeah, here it is. Nope. Where did I put that? Here it is. Okay, so after this is a good segue, but so we've also got the UAD Studio D as a send, which is just a nice send on if you hold down the buttons for 2 and 4. That's just like a classic chorus sound. It sounds great with when you basically send anything to it. I don't have a filter on this because sometimes I want like a wider bass thing, but again, you can trim that in mastering. And then I've got a delay, like a slap delay thing, which is using Soundtoys Effect Rack. So this big bad boy, 100% wet. It's just an 8th note delay, and then it's got a little bit of micro shift on it, which is another kind of delay, but it's very, very, very short, and it helps differentiate the sound in the mix. It sort of weakens the sound, but in some cases that can make it come through more. If you've got a few things that are competing for the same space, putting a micro shift on it will really help. Which is, I use it on vocals when I'm like making music a lot. But in EDM we use it for sounds and stuff. There's not a lot sending to that, if anything. Oh yeah, the guitar. Yeah, guitar. Slap delay on guitar sounds good. And why it's called a slap delay is just because it does like see, the feedback is on the minimum setting. So it just does one hit. It goes ba-ba instead of ba. It doesn't go ba-ba, like what you would consider like a normal delay or a ping pong delay or whatever. It just goes ba-ba. And so that's because delays back in the day when they started, they could only do one delay, which is a bit of fun. A little bit of a fun fact. So slap back delay, which is just set to the 8th note. You can set it to 16ths and stuff, and it can sound pretty cool, or 64ths even in certain delays, and it'll sound pretty sweet. And then the final thing that I've got on the send is UAD 1176 on nuke mode, which means you just hold in all of these 4 buttons. How how bad would that be if I was live streaming and said nuke mode and then just like something popped off? Anyway, you can put your compressor into nuke mode anytime you like by holding those 4 buttons with shift and clicking them all. That's part of the UAD thing, because that was a feature from the original 1176 that was unintended, but people really like the sound of. So all my drums are going to be sending to, maybe not all of them, maybe not the soft sounds, because this compressor generally, when you want something to spit, when you want something to go, you send it to the 1176, you crank it up, and you get this guy's little, get him going all over the place. So just get all the drums, solo them. Okay. So that was with the 1176, now without it. Now with. Because it's getting compressed so much by the precision limiter, you can't really hear it. But it's adding a lot of chunk and thickness to the drums, which in house music, or in this kind of house music, is what I want. I want that big feeling. Some people do little drums in EDM and it works great. Like the snare is little, but our kick is absolutely monstrous. If you miss that, it's not even sending to the 1176, and it's just so angry. Such an angry kick. And so yeah, okay. So that's my sends. And they're important for the mixdown because they're parallel sends. So you can send any track to your sends. And then it'll come through the return down here. And yeah, it helps you craft the sound. And so that's what I roll with when I'm working. And then when I mix down, I'm also rolling with that, but maybe with some alterations as we go. Okay, so before, I couldn't find this sound, which was using the delay. So that's providing a lot of candy on that back end. So I love that. And that brings me to the next point, which is session organization. I couldn't find that track making that sound because it wasn't where I put all of my vocals. So let me check this space vox thing. Is a vocal or not? Yeah, that can stay down there because that sounds more like a synth. So pull this track up to where the other vocals live. Some might say it's quicker to Command X, Command V, but I think it's more fun to do it like this. Anyway, and so how I structure every session I make with anything ever, except if I was doing like film, but we're not doing that. We're making fucking bangers. So vocals at the top, drums come next with the kick first. Anything that I want to have sub end in it, like really low end, I make it red, like this color red in every session. So it'll be one of the kick samples, and then the bass, different basses will be red. And that's just so I know those things require attention on the low end. Everything else maybe could be filtered out. So it's a sort of a marker that I leave for myself for when I'm mixing later. So yeah, kick, then snares. While we're here, I'll start naming everything properly, because if you do need to do stems and stuff, that's really important. for like anybody else who's going to use these things. So yeah, kicks, snares, hats, and then other kind of perk loops and stuff. And then, yeah, that's it. Then we get to the bass section. So I kept in the track. I sampled the track's low end. Because it's hard, like just by itself. But if I took that out, nothing's happening. It's crazy how good that goes. Sick. Anyway, and then we've got this sound when I didn't have my bass guitar on me, so. Now, this sound I might come back to and maybe do a bit of a bass line on, because I still feel like the drop is a touch empty. But we're doing that 85 to 100%. So, continuing on, bass.
Like the other boys do. They stare at me while I stare at you.
And they're out of time with each other, but I like it in that section. Because it feels like anticipation, like boom, 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 and then they join back up. So I don't mind that. I like it, but we will come back and, you know, start EQing these things. There's an 808 here, which is also red. Obviously, this bass, I'm like less concerned about the low end, so I left it purple.
Yeah,
This 808 has a lot of low ends.
Yeah, dripping in the zone. Yeah, dripping in the zone. My heart broke when I...
Sick. I'll come back to that section too. Yeah, and then we've got a bass real bass part that I didn't use. Let's turn it back on. Maybe put it in this part. So they did just say it was empty. Okay. Cool. And then there's this space vox thing I made. Now, it doesn't look like it has anything on it because it was a morph send that I flattened and froze. So it was a morph send with something going on. So it must have been a vocal going into a bass or something. And it kind of mimics that part in the original a bit with the texture. That's so fun. Sick. Yeah, these are definitely out of tune. This is so out of tune. That's better. Come back to that anyway, but cool. Sweet. So we got another bassy sound down here where I don't really want like the sub in it. So yeah, while we're there on that sound, I'll open up Pro Q. Chuck that behind the kickstart. Pump it up. That's going to be too much. Probably go about here. Turn it on a natural phase.
Dripping in gold.
Yeah, that's kind of so we're mixing now, right? We're EQing, right?
Dripping in gold.
And then and EQing's basic philosophy is just, can I bring out the best parts of this sound and reduce the worst parts of the sound by gently shaping it with EQ? Or am I making a crazy sound and I need to go insane with EQ? But we're doing a mix down, so we're being gentle. Like during a stream, if a sound needs it, I'll happily like just plus 30 the dB on the high end, you know what I'm saying? Like if it needed it, it doesn't. But this is more what you want to be, because EQ is digitally destructive to your signal. So you don't want to use a lot of it because it does weaken the strength of your signal. A kick drum with like a crappy EQ on it, like a really whack one, like maybe a plugin that does a bunch of other things, so it's not optimized well and it's also got a bad EQ on it, that's destructive. So you got to just be aware of it. Sometimes you want to make things super digital and it sounds cool. Sometimes you don't. You want to avoid that. In this song, since we're using real shaker, and that's the definition, is I pulled out a shaker, so it's real. We're just taking a more analog, gentle approach with how we're doing things with the mix down. Anyway, so then there's this sax chop, which is just ripped out of the original. I just really liked it, and I wanted to keep it in, and I like the sample sort of thing. You can kind of hear the wah, 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 wah in the back of that too. Bang, bang, bang. You know what I mean? I didn't want to copy that exactly though, so I just made it disgusting. And then we got and then after, so yeah, basically after the bass, then it's everything else. Instruments, melodies, chords, sort of arranged chronologically. Like I kind of put things that are at the start of the song as like Omnisphere 1. And then as it goes on, it'll be Omni 2, etc. So let's listen to all of the music files, all the music like stems by themselves. So just Rhodes keys down here, and then our Omnisphere pad, which is obviously really beautiful. Then for the pre-drop, we just go back to the OG's chords. So sick. Okay. So that's how janky the guitars sound without anything behind them. But they do have a lot of character, right? They're janky as fuck, but they've got a lot of character. So that's basically what it is. It's just a riff. And that references one of the riffs from the original. And then we're at the bottom of the session. We're at the end. And then, so, yeah, and then we got our sends like before. This is track 40, so it looks like we got 46 tracks. That is not a lot, but it is a remix. So that kind of makes more sense because there's a lot of like things that already sort of stand down and stuff, like the original vocals and stuff don't take up many tracks when they probably did originally. All right. So now we're going to go through it and do the low end thing. Okay, so I'll just go through track by track. And what I mean by the low end thing is decide, okay, I'm going to save this as a new session. You always want to do that at the start to make sure you didn't ruin it, okay? So we'll kick it off with the first track, which is the lead vox, which is how I like it set up, is that you want to find that at the top of every session. It's just like the main vox track.
Can you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I...
So we've got a little bit of that sidechain reverb, the Valhalla vintage going on, and then there's sort of there's automation and stuff, especially for the end. Yeah, there's a... Why is this delay slab just there? That needs to be in more spots. Okay, so this is part of the mixdown, right? Is it inspecting every track in a very formal way and being like, what's happening here? And does it need to happen? I really like how that delay makes that thing sound, that vocal sound. So I reckon in the throes of a stream, I just didn't continue on with that effect, but I really like it. So how's the sound on this one? Okay, not as much on that one. I reckon that one could have it. Full, maybe? Maybe not full, somewhere in the middle. Yeah, cool. Right, and then... Okay, this would be fun to get the slap delay coming up here. I think. Let's do that. All right, so... Dripping in gold, yeah, dripping in gold, yeah, dripping in gold, yeah, dripping in gold, yeah, dripping in gold. My heart broke when I saw you, my heart broke when I saw you, my heart broke when I saw you. They stare at me while I crave you. Sick. Okay. Because we're inspecting just this track, we're going to move on. We're going to skip that chorus. Should also tell you what I have on this track. EQP, which is the Pultec equalizer, which is just one of the best in the world, particularly for high end. And it does have a nice low end bump for like kick drums and stuff. So I'll often chuck the Pultec on the kick if it needs more sub, and then crank it. Not crank it because it's very powerful. And then with a real one, you wouldn't get away with doing 6 out of 10 boost, but what this is doing is boosting 12,000 hertz, which is like the sparkly frequency of a lot of people's voice. Why can't you want me like the other boys do? And this is without it. Why can't you want me like the other boys do? So she just goes further back in the mix. Now she's up front a bit more. Can I keep you safe? And so these vocals have already been mixed, right? These are mixed stems. So I'm not looking to ruin what they did. I reckon we get this. Just listen to this delay thing a bit better. Yeah, dripping in gold. My heart broke when I saw you. My heart broke when I saw you. My heart broke when I saw you. Yeah, that's fine. Cool. And then... That's cool. Cool. I didn't need it so much on the eye. So let's just bring that down a bit here. I like that delay through there. That's nice. So it goes crave you just before the drop, which is cool. Already sending to it, and then there's this final vocal. I love it, as I said. already mixed. So as you can see when she's singing, there is some low end 50 hertz. Like 50 hertz is like the sound of like you moving a chair or something and dragging it across the floor. Like there's not a lot of reason for 50 hertz to be in a lead vocal unless you got a voice like mine where it gets very like quite low and the actual note is getting relatively low down here. So you'd want to be a bit more careful with my voice, for example, but not with Giselle's. So with Pro Q on natural phase, we can just get rid of that.
Other boys do, they stare at me while I stare at you.
And because of the tempo change, because this is significantly faster, I can hear some artifact from the time warping on the top end of her voice. So bloody hell. All right, so we're gonna listen to it and then try a different warping mode and see if that sounds better.
Why can't you want me like the other
The artifacts
boys
I'm
do?
talking about are like
They
swishy
stare at
sounds
me
on the top
while
end. Like,
I stare at you. Why can't I keep you safe as my own one moment?
Complex Pro is tight. In the middle values generally give you like interesting results, but I found that formants on 100 or formants on 0 will be like a stronger phase response probably.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I stare at you. Why can't I keep you?
All of that sounds better than Complex as opposed to Complex Pro. So I'm fine with that. Let's hear how it sounds in context.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I stare at you.
Now, in the mixdown, we're talking about sends and returns and stuff. I'm gonna put a vocal 1176 down. So we're gonna do parallel compression on the vocal. Probably not the same model, because if you can, you wanna because I compress my drums with an 1176 and I often compress the vocals in parallel with an 1176 as well. Parallel compression is also called New York compression. I don't know if people still call it that, but probably doesn't need to smash like the drums on nuke mode, but let's put it on like maybe 12, right? And keep the input where it is for now. Solo her. This doesn't make sense to do it in solo, really, in my opinion, but I'm for the stream it does. So
why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I stare at you.
This pushing this compressor in parallel and not like on the main signal should make the vocal feel thicker in the mix without really changing anything or losing much out of the original vocal, unless you overpower it with the send, right? Like unless the send is louder than your original, then you're going to hear more compression than less, right? But ideally, parallel compression is about getting the best out of both words. So I'm going to slowly dial it up.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I stare at you.
Caching.
Why can't I keep you safe as my own? One moment I have you, the next you are gone.
Now, in isolation, without listening to the song in context, that sounds a lot more clear to me, which I really like. And what you can hear and what you want to be very careful of when you're compressing vocals is the sibilance on people's voices. Because a lot of pretty frequencies in people's voices while they're singing are around that frequency as well. So you don't want the S's to overpower anything. And as I was pulling that up, the S's just hit that compressor so nice and kind of made it spit with it, you know? So I'll play it to you again.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I stare at you.
Is all
Why
even.
can't I keep you safe as my own? One moment I have you, the next you are gone.
You feel it's a bit thicker and like there should be more of her going on. So let's play it.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do?
Awesome. Probably doesn't even need to be that much.
They stare at me while I stare at you. Why can't I keep you safe as my own? One moment.
Nice. All right, what else we got going on up here? We got some backing vox. Cool. Very cute.
Crave you.
Cute.
Dripping in gold.
All right, so that's kind of like a dry layer of the na 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 na. This next track says big na na na, so that's got murder melodies on it, doing a lot of work, making it, you know, just cooler. Spread it out. Let's get crazy. See how that sounds. Reckon if we bring back a little bit of the original signal to dry wet. There you go. I like that. Yeah, so there's no low end management on either of these tracks, so we're going to pop that in now. And if you're listening to this on a TV or something, this section's going to sound pointless, but or a phone, but it is what it is. This is important. I can even just see from the frequencies here that it's such a well managed vocal, so I'm glad we're not doing too much to it to ruin it. Yeah, cool. That's on natural phase. I'll chuck that on the next one too. And so why I put this one after Murder Melodies, which is making a lot of those crazy effects instead of before, because sometimes these cool effects can get affected by, these cool effects can be influenced by low end and stuff that you're not really hearing or listening to in that track. And I don't want to lose that if there is that, so I've put the EQ after it just in case there is something. I like that. So now we're gonna go to this track. Gonna drag another one of those low end EQs on to just filter it out. Yeah, so this. Sorry. There's all this mess down here, right? We don't need it. Cool. Now I got the really verby one. That's cool. That's got a spectral conquest on it, which is taking out the bottom end. Yep, there you go. So no need for that. Has a sound over here. Take the amount of the auto pan down a little bit. I think it's got to be kickstarted too. Cool. That feels a bit better, I reckon. Maybe this delay pick, because it's doing a lot of works. It's doing like -9 to the delay. Maybe delay should have a kickstart. We got to try it. So I know this is kind of jumping around the session a little bit, but this vocal is going to that send. So you do need to jump to your sends and see what's going on. It's definitely cleaner. Let's see if it's as cool though. So it doesn't really sound like impactful at all by itself, but cut off. I actually do like it. So like without. So I'm gonna tighten this up and then also change the mix percentage so it's maybe not compressing side chaining the whole thing. Happy medium. I like it. And then we've got our blur at the start, which is just from Spectral Blur, which is a Max for Live plugin. So you just put anything into it, and then it sounds like the CDJ reverb, which is fucking cool, in my opinion. We don't need to clean that up, even though there's, yeah, frequency one is 50 hertz. I don't care if there's anything down there for this, because it doesn't really happen again apart from the intro. So that's great. Yep. And then we got the crave chop. That's already got Spectral Conquest on it, so we don't want to EQ that. All right, vocals are for now done. All right, now we'll go kick. Yeah, I try to avoid grouping things, as you'll notice. Like this is not a drum group. It just sort of stops where it stops, and then the next stuff starts. Because groups in Ableton add a lot of processing weight, and you often don't need that, you know, in your life. So let's get into the kicks. And speaking of processing power, all right, since we've done all that, let's commit, freeze these tracks. Just so it takes the weight out of the session. Because I know that'll make my stream bad. When I saw you. I feel like that riff is so clutch for the whole remix that we've done here. Anyway, as you can see, but that took a long time to freeze. So there's clearly a lot of weight going on in the pool tech and all this stuff. It's writing the samples now down the bottom left. You can see it's going, ah! Cool. Let's flatten it. We can always go back, but it's good to commit to audio. So, to be honest, normally I mix down in Pro Tools. But that no one gives a fuck about that. So, yeah, as you can see, it's repopulating everything. And now, there's no EQs, no nothing. It's all flattened audio. It all sounds the same. It's got the same automation on it, sending to the sends at the right time. But then we can just, you know, move forward with our lives. So we've got our kicks. Sounding very good. Got to do this in context, and I got to do this with loudspeakers, so I'm going to mute and unmute myself as we go. All right, does that whole key work? It does.
Crave
So the reason I turn it up to mix the kick is because I need to hear how much sub there is if I can, right? And this studio is pretty good, but the monitors are 5-inch? No, 8-inch. They're 8-inch monitors. Are they 10s? It can't be 10s. Pretty sure they're 8s. Hold on. I need to check on the back of one of these mama. Yeah, they're 8s. Right. So 8-inch speakers means they can give you a indication of the sub if your room is good, which I made sure, like I'm surrounded by like acoustic material. There's this guy in the back, which you can't see on the mobile stream. You see it on the horizontal stream. I call him Bob the Blob, which is just this giant, like, just triangle pyramid of insulation. And that really helped with the low end, right? Because that's a corner of the room that basically the corners, right? And over here I'm very blessed to have like a not a harsh corner there, right? Like there's a wall that's angled. So you don't really want corners in your mixing room because you'll get standing waves and you'll mess up. You won't get the right bass. But I'm lucky, so by itself, it's unstoppable. In the mix, so the kick is unstoppable, but I think this sort of tough mid-level layer I've got I want to filter that down. So get out the best filter in the world. High pass it a bit because I want the red one to be doing bass, not this one, like sub bass. So maybe around 50. And then high pass off the top. See how that sounds. So by itself, you're like, oh, that's more MIDI. There's less of that, you know, there's less of the high end and the top end. But in the mix, it should make that whole kick a little cleaner. It's feeling better already. We've got to try the EQ. We got to try the pull tech on. Got to try the pull tech on this guy. That's monstrous, okay? And the kick is really important in this song. Obviously, it is in all house songs, but it is really driving the drop because the drop is so gentle, right? There's not that many elements that are crazy, just sort of background ear candy. Loving that. I've also noticed that there's a little pop that's not happening at the start of the first kick. There you go. Okay, so that can happen because that Ableton fades, right? So make sure that first one is at the start. Is that one gigantic? Yeah. Weird. See, this is why you got to go through your mix. Why is that one gigantic? Weird. Okay. See, I probably would have never noticed that. Listening to it, going through a limiter. All right. But there's also a lot of top end on it, and we don't need it. So I'm going to go over to the attenuator, select the most highest frequency, and then use this attenuation knob. So that was a dramatic use of the attenuation knob going all the way to 10. But I'd rather use this EQ than because it's an analog model rather than like a fab filter, etc. Because it's more natural. We'll see how it sounds all together. That is way cleaner. Way cleaner.
Dripping in gold.
So this moment is important in regards to the management of the bass, the low end of the track. I've decided I'm going to keep that kick. That's the kick. I'm not going to filter out any low messiness. I'm just going to keep that as it is because these ZGT kicks, I think they're for techno, but because they're really like, you know, they're a bit corked, but they're just unstoppable. I love them. All right, so then we got our snare knock. Absolutely brutal sound. We'll take out a little bit of the low end of it.
Rehearse steps on an empty stage. That boy's got my heart in a silver cage. Where can you?
We didn't miss anything there while we did that. So let's listen to it in context with more of the drums. So it's feeling good. The other thing that I did was add the top kick to the 1170, the drum 1176, and that snare's already going to it. I think it sounds great. Let's investigate this snare. I don't want to change anything about that. Maybe make it louder. It probably deserves to be louder. It's good enough. Okay, so again, that sound is good. It's providing a nice accent in the beat. But I see why I turned it down so much is because it's really... Whoa, it's got a different sonic space to the whole record. So I'm going to filter it again with sample X and take out the lows and the highs. So you'll notice, like, I don't come back and like treat the highs after I've treated the bass in this methodical way, because I sort of kind of do it at the same time. But it less, you know, the high end sort of, you got more freedom with it. You can be less dramatic about it. Okay, it's sounding a bit better. Let me crank it again. That's going dummy. That's going dummy. So, gotta look at the other drums while we're here. These three seem inextricably linked to me when I'm listening, so let's listen to them together. Sorry. There's a lot going on. There's a nice low end bump on one of these tracks, but it could be too much. We need this little bit at the end. I'm gonna see what that sample sounds like without this little tiny guy. It could be helping, might be hurting. Fade it out. Just duplicate this across.
I walked into the room.
All right, that's a tiny little tiny difference. It's just got to look. There's that little tiny sound was a going on to the beat 1, and I think it was making things worse. So I reckon I'll just rock this over to all the other spots in the track. You obviously can never forget, if you're making a change, a mix change, you want to make sure it stays mixed. You know what I'm saying? Knew it. Gotta delete it first. Not bad. This blue one probably has an effect on it. That's why I colored it blue. Yeah, it's got a massive reverb on it. Not mad at it. I like it. Bastard. That one's fine. Cool. Keep that going until the end. Very exciting stuff. Not all the way. So we still get our big reverb blue snare. Look at all these. I thought I deleted that, bruh. What? Oh, no, because I duplicated. I literally said, and I'll duplicate it across. I needed to delete it first. Idiot. Oh my God. Go away. Go away. Sick. Remember when Mario covers were sick. Alright.
Moment I have you, the next you were gone. Rehearse steps on an empty stage. That boy's got my heart in a silver cage. Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I crave you.
Alright, that was sick. This snare might have the bottom end I was talking about. It's too much. Wow, so it's got 30 hertz in it, which is just a bit too low. I mean, it's fine here, where it first comes in, because there's nothing else happening, but over here it's going to be cranking the limiter in a way that's upsetting. So I'm trying not to automate it, but if we lose something here, we'll put that sub back in. But let's go to around here. So if you're still looking for punch in something, but you're filtering out the lows, it can be good to just do a big bump just before when you're filtering it out. In context.
Rehearse steps on an empty stage. That boy's got my heart in a silver cage. Why can't you want me? Rehearse steps on an empty stage. That boy's got my heart in a silver cage. Why can't you? Rehearse steps on an empty stage.
Alright, so the phone or TV wouldn't have caught that, but when I took it out fully, I was like, oh, it really did miss it in context, right? When you're listening to a sound soloed, you can do anything to it and it might sound good or bad. You don't know until it's back in the song. So.
Rehearse steps on an empty stage. That boy's got my heart in a silver cage. Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I crave you.
Now we're going to check out the hi-hat. By itself, I kind of want to saturate it, but it might be okay because the real shaker has got a lot of high end. Together, maybe? Okay. I also think it's a little bit wide. So I'll show you how you can't have everything wide in your mix. You got to have some things really narrow so the wide things feel wide. Otherwise, they won't feel wide. Yeah, that's still important. With this one, I'm going to double click and then put some dynamic into it, some expansion. So not compression, but making it less compressed and more aggressive. And then I really want to, okay. We'll put a utility here, take down the width a little bit, and then let's fix the size of my stream. There we go. Let's now saturate it. Let's say little radiator by Sound Toys. So we're just listening to the change, right? Like I'm not changing the shaker, but it's there so I don't fuck it up. Instantly so much better, so much more balls.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do?
Yep, turn it down.
They stare at me while I stare at you. Why can't I keep you safe as my own? One moment I have, the next you are gone.
Now on that shaker, I'm gonna do the incubate the bull deck again. Yeah, it's juicy.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I stare at you. Why can't I keep you safe as my own? One moment I have, the next you are gone. Rehearse steps on an empty stage. That boy's got my heart in a silver cage. Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I crave you. Crave you. Dripping in gold. Crave.
I jumped around a little bit there, but the next thing is this electro loop. Cool. I just want to take out a little bit of the bottom because that's like a very nice. Reminds me of the start of Love Her by Romy, which is produced by Fred. Sounds almost exactly like that. Anyway. So you notice I didn't put the hat one track, or I didn't put the shaker into the 1176, but I did put this sound into into the drum 1176 with parallel compression. There it is with heaps. There it is, just a little bit. It works really good on harsh sounds, but if you've got soft sounds or reverbs, the 1176 may not come out on top, which is why you got to be careful with it with vocals. And I'm not going to bother with it for the hat for this track because it's just bumping the way it is. It doesn't need to be more compressed. I could try it though.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I stare at you. Why can't I keep you safe as my own? One moment I have, the next you are gone. Rehearse steps on an empty stage. That boy's got my heart in a silver cage. Why can't you want me like the other?
So what I did there was take down the low end because it just felt like it was clashing with the shaker after it had been saturated, which is understandable because saturation brings down the high end and stuff. What about here? Now that we've sort of zoomed it in on this sound, I can hear it clashing with the other hat parts. So let's give it a kickstart and see if it's just the first beat of the phrase that's, you know, not behaving itself. I reckon that helped a fair bit. Sick. The other thing that's messy is like the shaker. Put it with the kick. See if that sounds cleaner in the mix.
I walked into the room.
Oh, you know what it might be? It's this and this not playing together. Maybe. No, that feels good. Hey, what was that? You know what I mean? I could feel a little clunkiness around there. Oh my god, I found it. It was this. Oh, there's still more of those. Yeah, see, this is why you gotta not be an idiot and put unnecessary problems in your own way. Do a health check. Yeah, no, miss some. I guess the key thing there was I was using my ears really intently to be able to hear. There's something still not going together. And, you know, makes it sound bad. Clean. Yeah, there it was again. Cool. That little sound should now not happen and everything should be happy. And I can take back this shaker modification, hopefully. Now, so the drums are feeling good and done. However, we just want to test the pitch of the kick. So the question is, would just a couple little tweaks, maybe 1, 2 semitones down, will that help? Obviously you can't tell in without the song, but here we go. So I pitched it back up towards the end of that, and it felt better, I think. So let me look at the kick samples together. I'm thinking of just changing the top one. All right, that was pretty stanky. Let's see how it sounds in context. Better, love it. Cool. All right, down to the bass. Let's go. I'm just gonna leave that as is because it's making everything really good. So this bass sound has an EQ on it already.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I stare at you. Why can't I keep you safe as my own? One moment I have, the next you are gone.
So what I then was just pitch that bass riff up an octave because it was never really jamming, but now I think it actually is. Now we got this sound. Let's widen it. So I just sent it 100% to the UAD Studio D chorus. That's sick, but the sound itself needs a little taming because it's quite jumpy aroundy. That's a technical term. That's just keeping it in place. All right, and then the next thing is the sax layer, but that's already Special Conquest. The next stem after that is the OG keys, which absolutely need nothing done to them. Got this pad, no EQ, so that's a good place to start.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me.
Sorry, I just realized I was on mute for that last bit. All I wanted to say was I'm using a group now because I want to apply the same sort of low-end cleanup EQ to everything that's in this group. And then how do we feel about it when it's in? Do we want to do anything to all these guitars and everything?
Dripping in gold. Crave you. I walked into the room dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold. I walked into the room. I walked into the room dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold. I walked into the room dripping in gold. Dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold. My heart broke when I saw you. My heart broke when I saw you. My heart broke when I saw they stare at me while I crave you.
All right. So in the last drop ish, the last sort of two situations, if you will, are really highlighted by this ride cymbal pattern, which is so dirty and disgusting, but it's so freaking good for the song, right? But I can hear something clashing, so I might take out these guys because I don't really want to change much about the ride sample. It sounds freaking really cool.
I crave you.
That's better. So yeah, it's really, because that shaker part's moving all over the place because it was real shaker, but it's nice, it's fun. So yeah, you just gotta make sure that your high end's not competing with itself, particularly in regards to drums, because you know other stuff doesn't have as much high ends in it generally as drums or vocals, or at least that's how I mix. Okay, one synth that I do want to give some attention to is this one. So which just gives me so much joy. I can hear that at the start of the chain, that EQ at the start of the chain, but there's a big ass saturator on the end, so I want to see what it looks like.
I walked into the room dripping in gold. I crave you.
I'll take that. All right. Well, that was a lot of cleaning up, some drudge work there, but like, you know, it's gonna happen at some point. Part of me is like, could there be one more bass sound that's a bit more of a riff? But it's a stretch. It's a stretch. It's a stretch. So anyway, coming back to the integrated LUFS now. So it was -8.5, I believe, from memory. We've pushed it up about 1 LUFS over the course of this mix, but I do really, because everything's mixed a bit better and there's less mess, precision limiter doesn't have to work as hard because there's nothing else on the master bus to keep everything in check. So we've managed to increase the overall loudness of the song without losing any feeling. In fact, I feel like we've added feeling.
Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I crave you. Crave you. Dripping in gold. Crave you. I walked into the room dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold. I walked into the room dripping in gold. Dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold. Yeah, dripping in gold.
So now it's time to do the mix down, the down part. Because it's EDM, I've been sort of mixing it, listening to how it sounds with the limiter at the end, right? But what we want to do is turn it all the way back down so there's no limiter action happening. And then start turning it back up and compressing it in a nice way. So yeah, when you're doing that with mastering, you sort of want to do it towards, you know, in like your biggest bit, essentially, like where all the frequencies are hammering. So let's start here at the build. Or this. Yeah, we'll start here. So just gonna, in the mix down, we're gonna turn down. So the just Command A. Okay. And the reason, okay, you should never use volume automation in Ableton because you can't Command A, so select all, and just drag down the faders like you would on a desk or something, right? Like you can't do it if you've got volume automation like on the volume of your tracks. So avoid doing that at all costs. So when it comes to mix down time, you can just go boop. And you want it kind of metering around sort of there, right? Like -12. You know what I'm going to do? Just before we turn it up, I'm going to put some more chutzpah on that track sample. Cool. And yeah, all of the sends have sort of come down accordingly, which is good. That's what you want because everything's post fader in Ableton. In terms of sending to, I think you can change it here. But yeah, I've got it all set to post fader so that the fader volume does affect the send volume. which is just, I feel, a more natural way to do things, and it helps when you're doing the mix down. Okay, so now you'll see our overall loudness is nothing. -40. We got a long way to go, right? We're not going to look at that for a while. We're going to use our ears. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is put an ampex master tape on it. Hopefully I have enough UAD processors left to put the real one on. Cool, I do. What a tape machine on the master does is just glues everything together. You want to turn off wow and flutter. You want, for this model, you want to turn off the transformer noise too, but you want to leave crosstalk on. What crosstalk is the left channel and the right channel sort of bleeding in together, but we're used to hearing that sound, and it sounds really nice to humans. It sounds congruent. It sounds full, even though it's subtle. So I just did a tiny, tiny, tiny boost to the high end there. And we want to turn it back up. But with the tape machine, you do not want it in the red unless you're going for like a super distorted, full track distortion sound like the end of what's that Billie Eilish song? You call me again, driving the birds. Happier Than Ever, of course. The very end of Happier Than Ever, that's the kind of sound that this gives you if it goes into the red. So we're not going to make it go into the red. You can change all these little settings and stuff, these sort of like speeds and stuff for the tape and everything, and that'll change a couple of things over here, so you got to review it. Not into it. That seems better. It's just a feeling thing because it's very subtle. Okay, next thing we want to do is get Brainworks Digital. So this is a really nice mastering EQ. First thing we're going to do is grab the mono maker, pull that up to like 70, 80 hertz. And so that mono is all the bass, so it sounds better in a club. That last synth I worked on is now just poking through just a little bit too much. The other thing I did whilst the track was on, I didn't talk about it, was put precision stereo, which is sometimes something you would put on the master occasionally. So this creates like side-to-side frequencies out, even if you just give it a mono signal, which is insane. I don't know how it does it. It's magic. It's amazing. UAD and Bobcat did good. I put that on that synth guitar group, so it's affected that wide and boosts the sides a fair bit, 1.5, and then did this sort of enhancement thing, which is where it creates new frequencies, which I just don't understand. It's just coming out a bit too much. Okay, that's better. And so this kind of thing is fine to do as well. Once you've turned it, like when you've turned everything down, you're not slamming into the master, you go, oh, that thing's sort of poking out a little bit too much. You can kind of pick what's a bit too much work for the master and everything like that. Okay, so going back to BX Digital V3. So while something's playing, you could solo these frequencies and see how pokey everything is. Sorry, beg your pardon. It does that when you scroll through the frequencies, beg your pardon. So we're listening to just the side. I'll beg your pardon. You know what? I didn't turn it up on the ampex. Silly me. Switch it back to input and then get the record knob, because this affects whether you're changing the volume of the output or the input. So you want to be changing the volume of the input. And then you want to push that record knob up. That shouldn't be able to go all the way to the max. So I'm going to turn things back up in Ableton just a touch. There we go. So you don't want to go into the red at all, because you might not be able to hear it on your speakers, but on other speakers like MacBook speakers and stuff, you'll hear this low end distortion come through really gnarly. So you want to make sure it does not do that. So at this point in the EDM mixdown, you go, my kick's not loud enough. And pump that shit up. And actually hear it. That sounds a little gnarly. Might duck a little bit of that out of the sides. What's going on in the middle? Let's boost that a little bit. And then at this stage, I also want to find something to poke out. You know, something to highlight rather than to just cut away. I'm making minuscule changes, obviously, because it's already sounding fairly good. Like I played the unmixed version at a party and it went very good. So we're just making it better. This is the 85% to the 100%. Let's go back here. So as you can hear, when it's uncompressed, that kick is coming through nice. It's got a little bit of a highlight on this mastering EQ. And then I've done away with a little bit of the mess around 1 to 2K. There seems to be a bit of a spike both in the mids and the sides. And then we just want to go through the sides again. It's nothing really rough. Okay, around there is a little rough. This is feeling so good. But as you'll look, neg 15 LUFS. So if we're getting this back up to master volume, it's not all the way there yet. All right, so what I'm going to grab next is a Fairchild compressor. I think I'm pretty close to my UAD brain limit. Not my brain. The UAD brain. Shout out UAD. Anyway, the Fairchild 670 is an incredible compressor. I'm going to put it after our mastering EQ. And now the benefit of analog model plugins versus the actual analog model, although the analog model will give you lots of fun sounds and things that you can't recreate with these models even, they give you sidechain filters, right? So you can compress only a part of the song frequency-wise coming up from the bottom, as you'll see here. I'll lift it up. As you see here, you go from off to 500 hertz. So it's a low, so beg your pardon, it's a high pass filter that you're basically picking whether you want it to react to the kick drum and the bass or not. I don't. I want that coming through. I just want the Fairchild to sort of squish the top end together in a nice way, which is what it does best. So I've hit sidechain. Now we're going to crank the input gain or reduce the threshold. That's all you want it to do. I'm telling you right now, you want that magic one. That magic one. That's all you want it to do. You do sometimes too. Maybe change the time constant. See how that feels. All right, that's cooking. It's subtle, but it's cooking. Gonna hit clear on this. How hard are we hitting our limiter now that we've turned things back up? So we're still not hitting it at all. So now's the time. And that is seriously my mastering chain. That's it. UAD make great plugins. They sound really good. That's it. That's my mastering chain. Any more complex than that, you're fighting over a bad mix, essentially. But that happens. You know, sometimes if you're a mastering engineer, you get a bad mix. But since I mixed it the whole time we've been doing it, I feel like this is one limiter is going to be fine. Oh, one thing we could try is putting Oxford Inflator on as just like a little bit after the Fairchild. So this is a saturator. I wouldn't want it to saturate too much because I don't want the chord parts and instrumental, you know, sort of the low key parts to sound distorted. So it helps with overall loudness without actually making the signal peak louder, which is insane. It's feeling good. It's feeling good. It's feeling real good. Okay, let's crank this precision limiter then. I think that's it, and then we'll check our Uline loudness meter after that. But we're going to use our ears first. Okay, so what you can see there on precision limiter is really the kick is the only thing that the limiter is working on, which is perfect for house music and EDM because the kick in a house song where it's just 4 to the floor, it's happening so often in the song, like every single beat. So it needs to be hitting the limiter in the right way. Like that is what house music has always been about. Not always been about, but mixing house music at least.
Stare at me while I crave you.
I'll get up Yulene, the loudness meter, and see where we're at.
Dripping in gold. Crave you.
All right, so we're back up to similar levels to where we were with the working mix. So we're at about -8.5 again. It's feeling really good and really punchy. But we'll try and get into a loud part and then see where we can squeeze out the most and then call it a day for mastering this one. Okay, so there I could hear it absolutely getting a little bit distorted. So I'm going to wind that back down. Back to about here. Let's see how that goes for Yulene. So that sounds good, and it's feeling punchier, warmer, and brighter than it did before. So that's kind of what you want a house mixdown to be. However, it was doing 13. This limiter was doing 13 dB of limiting in the mix, but we can't get it back up yet. And that might be because we've increased the bass is probably the most likely thing. So let's just double check the ampex on the loud sections and make sure that's not distorting. The ampex is the tape machine. It's close. It's close. Let's turn it down a little bit. And then we're gonna essentially filter out some stuff. Try and get a bit more volume out of it. So 12 is the hardest this filter goes, I believe, at 12 slope. That's already a lot cleaner, filtering out that bottom. Let's go for more. Because remember, I EQ'd everything else except for that main techno kick sample. So that's what we're working on here, and that is good. That is exactly what a mastering engineer would be doing, right? They'd be going, oh, I can get it to -8, but he wanted it a little bit louder. Let me investigate. And then, so yeah, I'm getting rid of this, and it sounds better in my studio, so. That's mixing and mastering a house track. So, gonna give that a listen, and then we listen back to the last section and make sure it's not worse, okay? But I feel like we've got just a touch more volume out of it, and everything feels more purposeful. So I'm feeling really confident about putting this into this Skio music competition. But yeah, we'll see how. Yeah, there's a few things I haven't done that I normally do, and which is maybe a few rises and sweeps, but yeah, I don't know. I can't be. It kind of works without them. Like the original doesn't have any of that shit in it, does it? So I'm like not yearning for it. But anyway, so we'll have a listen to this, then have a quick listen to the last session. No, let's go to the last session now. Let's save this. Yeah. Go back. See, this is the moment. This is the moment. Have I just spent the last 2 hours ruining the song? Have I just spent the last 2 hours finishing the song? So that's really why you're going to make a stamp on it and be like, nah, this is audio now, or at least I'm treating it as just audio. It's just, this is how it is. And I'm mixing it and I'm getting the best out of these elements. But then, because of the beauty of modern music production, you can go back. All right. Let's go from like here.
Steps on an empty stage. That boy's got my heart in a silver cage. Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I crave you. Crave you.
All right. So that's how it sounds there. To me, that sounded floppier. And it sounded more like Ableton. If that makes sense, it sounded more electronic. It sounded less like a real song that makes you go, oh, you know, like it sounded more flat, like within the speakers rather than jumping out at me. Even though some of those sounds were hard, but like, yeah, like that snare in the bill was probably too hard. And I don't love comparing masters to other songs, especially if I'm the one doing it. If somebody else is doing it for me, then I will. But if I'm doing my own master, I just go off the LUFS and how it feels, because trying to make your mix or your master exactly the same as somebody else when you have different songs, it's you circling your tail. All right, let's see how it sounds now.
Steps on an empty stage. That boy's got my heart in a silver cage. Why can't you want me like the other boys do? They stare at me while I crave you. Crave you. Dripping in gold.
Yeah, this is fire. So we got it louder, and it feels fantastic. All right.
I walked into the room dripping in.
So the other tests, of course, are listening to it in your car, if you've got a car, listening to it on your phone afterwards, which I'm also going to do. Yeah. So that's basically everything to do with mixing down and then mastering a house song, in my style at least. So we covered session cleanliness and how you've ordered everything and make sure it's personal to you and you understand it and you can fly through it and know where you are. Then secondly is double checking each track from the top of the session down and thinking about how much low end needs to be in it and thinking if there's been any EQ done on it. Is this the best that sound can be? Does it need a little bit of a boost or a little bit of a cut, something gentle, and then filtering out the low end to keep room for your kick and your bass. Then there's also width, which we tackled a little bit with reverb, and then sort of squishing things in with utility, but then widening things with the Studio D chorus. Talked about 1176s and using them as parallel sends to thicken up the music. And then we talked about the mix down, how to mix it down, clean it up a bit, make sure she's pretty and turn it back up and see if you get something better, which I think we did today. So, wait. So, that's all I got time for today. Thank you so much for coming along for the ride. Bit of a tutorial today. I hope you really, really enjoyed it. I've got a new outro screen, which I'm hype about. So I'm really excited for that. But anyway, I'm keen to see what everybody thinks of the final version of this song, I think. And then I'll put it out really, really soon. But until next time, peace out.